Osio, halato. Greetings, ancient ones. Y'all gotta bear with me. I literally bootlegged my camera stand. I got the, one of those cheap fans that you get, the oscillating ones, which to me is just a tripod. I literally got my phone sitting up on that, so hopefully it don't fall. I just wanted to come to y'all today on this episode of decolonization, right? And destroying some urban myths. And one that we quite often get assaulted with, yes, I said assaulted with, is the whole myth of federal recognition. People often say, well, are you federally recognized? Or we get demonized by these people working in these positions within the territories that we reside in, or as I like to call them, colonies, because they still are colonies, such as Ohio and Florida and Jersey and New York and things like that. So within these colonies and these people who do not have a full comprehension of indigenous law. So they'll say things like, oh, well, you're not federally recognized. And we'll have different attacks along that lines. Okay, you do not have to be federally recognized to be who you are. Okay? Federal recognition is a new process. A new process. There was no federal recognition when my great-great-grandparents was alive. My great-great-grandparents was alive. Okay? I'm 45. There was no such thing as a federal recognition process at the time. And we were and still are indigenous, minus the federal recognition process. Now, the federal recognition process is a colonization process. It's a process that dangles a carrot in front of the face of someone who is starved and hungry, that doesn't have money to do things within their community. And as a reward for the federal recognition, your tribal business is no longer your tribal business, because you have to open all of that up to be federally recognized, to include your entire bloodline, which has always been a dangerous thing for my people. If you don't know where we at, you don't know who we are, you can't hunt us down. So the whole myth of federal recognition is just that. It's a myth. It turns you into something that is political. The benefits that federally recognized tribes receive is not based on them being indigenous by blood, but it is a political and legal status. Legal is the same as political. Political is the same as legal, in reference to federal recognition. Now, am I just speaking off the top of my head? No, because that would be wasting my time and your time. I know from experience because I've researched the topic. I also know from experience because myself, on behalf of my family and my tribe, wrote a letter to this administration explaining what happened to my line that comes out of the colony now called Virginia and Kentucky, and how the mislabeling happened with Walter Ashby, Plecker, and the many other agents. That letter was forwarded to the Department of Interior, Bureau of Indian Affairs. Now, mind you, within the letter, I use the terminology ancient one. My people never called themselves Indian. That is a colonized term. Anyhow, it was forwarded over there. And, of course, they was like, oh, well, you might want to seek federal recognition. So then I sent back a return letter that was destroying the whole federal recognition process, speaking on how it is a new thing and I am ancient. And in my custom, I don't know about anybody else's, but my custom, It is the elder that recognizes the youth, not the youth recognizing the elder. They would be the youth. I also brought up the fact that people who have endured enslavement, and we're talking about what they call Indian slavery, but the slavery of indigenous people, people who have endured that, people who have endured being misclassified as colored, Negro, black, African American, mulatto, in some instances white, people who have been disconnected, forcefully removed from their connections to their bloodline, not to mention the thousands of babies that have been put into foster care. Okay? Now, one of their requirements is that you keep a continuous paper trail of your existence before, I believe it's the 1900s. You might want to check that for yourself. Always check, always verify. Before the 1900s, which becomes very difficult when enslavement started in the 1500s. And you literally don't have a paper trail. You literally don't have a paper trail. Unless you were the ones who decided to side with the U.S. when they were sweeping through the territories and creating havoc and destruction and mayhem and all of that. You know, it's all recorded in history. None of this is hidden, or it shouldn't come as a shock or surprise to anyone. Now, those people will have a paper trail. You know, they had the luxury of paper trails. You know, that's what happens when you side with certain people. You get certain luxuries others do not have. Because if you're on the road and you're running and you're moving from this spot and that spot and you're trying to keep safe, are you bringing papers with you? Like, the whole concept of paper just didn't exist for us. In the reference of keeping details, like that didn't exist for us. We carve things, right? We carve things, whether it was through our artwork or our jewelry. This is the Olmec. I make my own jewelry because it represents who I am. But that's how we kept records. So anyhow, I let them know about that whole process and how I would never disgrace my ancestors by begging to be accepted by someone who came in and destroyed them, colonized them, and renamed them. And I received a letter back that said that there is no requirement and or expectation that you would seek federal recognition. Let's rewind. There is no requirement and or expectation that you would seek federal recognition. So we need to destroy this whole myth about federal recognition. And there's only 573 federally recognized tribes, like they're the only tribes in existence in the Northern Hemisphere, or the only ones that have been legitimized. We need to go right ahead and just destroy that right now, because it's not true. Those are the ones who are political. They have political advantages, okay? Political advantages. Those are the ones. There's also a term that I found doing my research in the congressional records. Now, the congressional records is when the Congress, they're having conversations with themselves. And they use the term straggling Indians. Let me say it again, straggling Indians. Their definition of a straggling Indian are people who left their nation, willingly left their nation, right? So they were essentially nationless. They were not with their indigenous nation. They were not a citizen of the U.S. They were straggling. They were somewhere in between the middle. Now, a lot of those straggling Indians decided that they wanted to vote. They wanted to live like the white man. This is when we have the whole Civil Rights Act happening and the Votes Right Act happening. All of us didn't want that, right? But see, there is a myth that somehow a few speak for the many. There were many of us that were fine living the way we lived prior to the invasion and colonization. Okay? We did not desire to vote in a system that had nothing to do with us. We did not desire to be put on census rolls in a system that had nothing to do with us. We were quite fine living the way that we lived for millions of years prior to invasion and colonization. But you had a few that wanted something new, something shiny. It looked good. It was something different. They didn't agree with the ideology, the ideas of the old nation, so they wanted a new nation. It's an immigration process. It's a naturalization process. It will be the same way if someone came from France and decided that, you know what, they don't want to live up under their government anymore, and they want to be up under someone else's government, so they put in an application to be naturalized as a U.S. citizen. Same exact process, right? I did not go through a naturalization process. I am not a straggling Indian. I did not seek to be a part of something that has nothing to do with me. I'm decolonizing my bloodline. I'm getting away from the old ideologies, the myths, the lies that has been told to many people. So when someone tells you that you're not federally recognized, you tell them, I don't choose to be federally recognized. There's no prerequisite for me to be indigenous to be federally recognized. Matter of fact, the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples speak nothing of federal recognition in reference to indigenous peoples. That's not a requirement to be indigenous. The American Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples speak nothing of federal recognition. It is not a requirement to be indigenous. Oftentimes you hear the myth of, I'm an enrolled member of a blah, 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 blah tribe, right? Enrolled member. Just let that sink in for a minute. Enrolled member. You have a family, right? You got your mama, you got your daddy, you got your aunties, you got your grandparents. When was the last time you was enrolled? Was there an enrollment process to be a part of your family? No. No. So again, the verbiage, listen to the verbiage. You have natural, and then you have unnatural. Natural does not involve an enrollment process. Unnatural involves an enrollment process. Enrollment is not a language that we use. We did not enroll family members, okay? Family was family, is family. What's some of the other myths that we deal with? Oh, your tribe is not legit. Well, what do you mean by legit? Like, who has the criterion of indigenous people? In what's legitimate? You know, because you haven't heard of us, then we're not legit. What's another one? Oh, your tribal ID is fake. Let's see. I've traveled. I've flown on my tribal ID. You know, fake. Like, what's that? Whatever happened to self-identification? I mean, it's no myth who the indigenous people are. There's the people who have the records, okay? They know. You come into a territory, you invade and you colonize, you take records. You keep tabs. So they know. It's only ignorant people who don't know. And it's only ignorant people who use colonized terms such as enrollment, card carrying, federally recognized, what's another one? 5 civilized tribes. I mean, come on. Can we just breathe that in for a moment? 5 civilized tribes. Okay, come on. What we got? We got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 out of the thousands of tribes here in the northern hemisphere. 5, guys, 5. Okay, 5 civilized. Look up the term civilized so that you can fully understand what 5 civilized tribes mean. The 5 civilized tribes in no way speak for the entirety of the Cherokee, the Choctaw or Chata, the Chickasaw, and the rest of them. But they do not speak for all of us. They certainly don't speak for my Anayunwea ancestors. Not at all. We don't know them. Never knew them. But there's a myth that these 5 out of thousands of tribes and nations, I like the term nation. Nation deals with birth and common ancestry. You see how that works? Nation deals with birth and common ancestry. Tribes can be a hodgepodge of people. Anybody, and it does not deal with birth and common ancestry. So we have the 5, right? The gatekeepers, you know, the ones who makes decision of who else can be federally recognized. And we have these 5, right? Kicking out tribal members who are darker in hue. Now, one of the 5, the Cherokee, right? If you look at the ones on the top, I don't, what? They don't look like any, I'm gonna use Trump's words. They don't look like Indians to me. Okay. And no, Indian don't have a phenotype, but I know what German look like. And if the dark ones was your family, because after again they was enrolled on those tribal rolls, why are they being kicked out? Where they do that at? Where you start kicking out family? Again, 5 civilized tribes. Okay? My people are not civilized. No. Civilized means you've given up. You've taken on the ways of someone else. It's their definition. Because remember, they called us heathens and barbaric and warlike, and you know, anytime we didn't agree with what they were talking about, we were savages, right? You know, you got the youth running around now calling themselves a savage. But yeah, those are myths. They're not true. We need to take and put an end to those myths and quit using those colonized terms as weapons to harm our people. We all have the same problem here around the world globally as indigenous people. We no longer have access to our land. We're paying rent on land that belongs to us historically, hereditarily. We're paying rent. There are many indigenous people who are homeless, without a home, sleeping on the street, no food to eat. You have some that's in a home, barely can make rent, barely can feed them families. That's a disgrace. That's an injustice. The U.S. apologized to what they did to Native Americans. I'm still waiting for them to apologize to what they did to indigenous people in the United States. Because when they reference the term Native Americans, they are talking to the federally recognized tribes. They're not talking to us. They're not apologizing to us. I see I do not see the evidence of an apology to us. Because, see, you have to see evidence. Someone can say they're sorry, but you have to see the action that follows that to show that they're actually sorry. When they talk about budget cuts for Native Americans, when they talk about grants for Native Americans, research the qualifications of those grants. They're going to lead you right back to federal recognition. Again, political, legal advantages. Political and legal advantages. Has nothing to do with you being indigenous at all. Which brings me to the terminology $5 Indians. Meaning, I mean, this stuff is, you can research all of this stuff. All of this stuff you can research and you can verify. Where you had European immigrants, because they feel like money was being allotted, land was being allotted. Now, after they had already taken a part in the land grabs of the settlers, right? They had already taken a part of that, right? Had already benefited from that. They still wanted more. So as we were being displaced and they were making these concentration camp rolls, mind you, the people that was making the rolls were Europeans. They were in charge of who got on the list and who didn't get on the list. So when they buddies said, hey, I'll pay you a little something, put my family on the roll, they got on the roll. They were now considered an Indian. Entitled to all of the political and legal advantages of that. Again, Indian, not the same as indigenous, right? Not the same. We all didn't call ourselves, matter of fact, we didn't call ourselves Indians. Some people took that term, they accepted it, they grabbed it, they held on to it, they nursed it. That's fine. But understand it comes with political and legal advantages. And that also comes with certain qualifications. So you have to prove that you are this political and legal construct. So anyway, they got put on the rolls. And they started to receive these political and legal advantages. Now that they were in, right, they started to bring their family in through adoption. And then they would marry another European. Okay, so bring them in. But they still European. One has the title Indian. So then everybody else that comes, all the Europeans that come after that, has that political and legal title. And then you fast forward to 2018 and you start looking at these chiefs and wondering, how is it that these people are in the position that they're in? How is it that these people do not look like even the other people that are their citizens? How is there such a large disparity? Well, if you believe that someone ripped you from your root, from your area that you known, set you into an unknown area without the intentions of infiltrating, destroying, rearranging, changing a system that they force you into, then you're sleepwalking. And you have truly took too much of the Kool-Aid. That's why on TV you don't see images portrayed looking like me. You have people in tribes that will tell you, I've never seen an Indian portrayed that looks like me. You have other people that will come up with a myth that says, I need some water, y'all. That if you have dark skin, copper colored skin, okay? Copper colored skin, that you got African in you. right? You got African in you. That's always the one. You got African in you, right? They don't say nothing about the European that you may have in you because your skin is copper colored, right? They don't say nothing about the Irish ancestry that you may have in you because your skin is copper colored, right? They don't say anything about the Iberian ancestry that you may have in you from the conquistadors because your skin is copper, right? Although we know that a lot of them that came over here were copper colored. Y'all need to read, what is it? Benjamin Franklin's, I think it's The Peopling of the Americas, where he, in his own words, talk about how the German were swarthy, which is dark-skinned people, where the French were dark-skinned people, where it's essentially the only people who were considered white, as in pale, which the actual term is black, pale and bleached up, were the Englishman and the Saxon. Everybody else was dark skinned. Everybody else was dark skinned, to include the Irish. So, you need to start doing some research and stop listening to these lies and myths. Anything that is shot at you like a bullet to harm you, you need to research and get to the root of it. Then once you know, you can judge a person's level of ignorance by the things that come out of their mouth. You know exactly that they don't know what they're talking about. Now, to the family who fell victim to reclassification, but they always knew who they were because grandma said it, granddaddy said it, auntie said it, you got work to do. Decolonizing your bloodline. How are you perceived within your community? Do they know who you are? Do your doctor know who you are? What do your driver's license say? All of these things, this paperwork, what does it say? How are you described? If you fill something out and it does not reflect who you are, write it in. There's nothing wrong with write it in. Get that whole programming of multiple choice out of your head. It's not a multiple choice if you only have set choices for me. Write it in. Write in who you are. You can put in your tribe affiliation. You can explain that it's not to be confused with any federally recognized tribes. Whatever. It's your identification. Write it in. To my relations who are confused and who have been deceived by this whole colonized paradigm called Moorish American, that's another form of colonization. These people, and I don't know who infiltrated and who brought this sickness to us, but they're trying to take us away from who we are by placing the term Moorish American on us. And there's a lot of indigenous people who have gotten caught in that trap, saying that they're Moorish American, trying to convince themselves that Morocco, which is something new, has always been here in the Americas. They're trying to make sense of it. They're trying to take Moorish belief systems. And when I say Moorish, we are not talking about the Moors who actually went and conquered some stuff over there in Africa, right? In Africa. We're not talking about them. We're talking about lost indigenous people who are now calling themselves Moorish Americans. But their grandmama and their granddaddy was from Georgia, the Carolinas, New York, places like that. Their grandparents didn't know nothing about no Moorish American. Never called themselves a Moorish American. But they'll say, yeah, we Cherokee, we Choctaw, we Creek, we Powhatan, so on and so forth. Or they say we Taino, Mexica. so on and so forth. So we have all of these colonized things that's coming in at us, that's trying to take us away from who we are. Stay the course. If grandmama wasn't talking about it, I don't know why you talking about it. Every time I ask these so-called Moorish Americans if their great-grandma called herself a Moor, they cannot answer, because it never happened. Their whole belief system, since we're destroying myths, their whole belief system is that what qualifies you as a Moor is your skin tone. So we're back to the skin tone as being a qualification. So are the people from Papua New Guinea, are they Moors? Are they African? No, they're not. And they're not going to listen to you try to tell them that that's who they are, because they know who they are. The various dark-skinned indigenous people around the world globally know who they are. But you have all of these new modern people trying to tell them who they are based on skin color. How ignorant can you be? If we're going off of skin color, why not call them ancient Europeans? Some people say Europeans. Why not call them ancient Europeans? Why not call them ancient Japanese people, ancient Chinese people, ancient Mongolians, right? Further back you go, the darker the skin is, if we're going off of skin color. So this video is a little bit too long for me, 32 minutes, going on 33. So in closing, destroy the myths and do not let the myths hold you back. Do not let the myths make you feel less than. Too many of our kins feel less than because they got rejected by the Cherokee tribe, right? Or the other tribes. And they feel like for some reason they are not who they are. You still are indigenous. That heavily controlled club did not want you. See, there are certain criteria that you have no clue about, and you'll never have any clue about, because those were some backdoor dealings. You may see, some people from those tribes may see this video and get offended, but I don't particularly care. I've done the research. Pull up the qualifications of being federally recognized. And after you thoroughly read it, see if that feels good to you. With that being said, peace, love, light, ancient ones, destroy all the myths, keep moving forward, make your ancestors proud.